Chrissy's story starts with a familiar tune. The pressure to be a good girl in a strict religious household. If that sounds familiar, you're in the right place. Hi there, it's Matthew Blades, and this is the quick tips version of our podcast. Meaning, if I can only spend 5 minutes with you, what would I want you to know from our previous podcast? And this week, we are going to sit down and spend just a couple of minutes with Crissy's story, which starts out, as I mentioned, in a really strict household religiously.
Which was good and problematic at the same time. My dad became a pastor when I was probably around 9-ish, enough for me to remember and watch him be ordained and know the weight of it. And so I grew up in a really high control, like be good. I knew about hell at an early age, and that's something that I've had to unpack in my own healing, is the fear of like what hell did to my nervous system. And I grew up with a specific theology called Calvinist theology, where they teach you that you are bad, you are sinful, you are wicked and evil, and that you can't trust yourself, that the only good thing in you is Jesus.
Okay, so we go on to have a really in-depth conversation about all the different ways in which that impacted her life as a young girl, as a teen, as a coming-of-age woman, into her 20s and 30s, and then when she had a family. Like, there is so many layers to the damage that she endured because of that situation. And one of the questions that I asked her towards the end of the podcast was, do you think that religious communities are getting better about these types of things? Or are they still stuck way back in the Stone Age in a lot of respects with the way that they're raising children, specifically as it relates to how parents punish their children for just doing kid things? Crissy thought about it for a second, and here's what she said.
No, I don't think so. I think there is a population of people like myself who have left high control religion or deconstructed or created a faith that feels more embodied and true to like what Jesus actually taught. So I think that group of people is doing better, but I don't think that they would be associated with any church. Or the typical evangelical church. I recently just saw a podcast a client brought up of, her name's Maddie something. She was a bachelorette, and she's a very popular evangelical speaker, and her husband were on the podcast, and they were talking very callously about how corporal punishment, how they're going to spank their child. And they said it with this like real callousness that was like laughing, like almost like they were looking forward to it, like it was their right to hit their child. And it was so gross to me, and I was just like, okay, you don't have the space or energy to go there, Chrissy. But like it really did show that there's this like in our country specifically, I do believe there's what would you say, there's like a returning to conservatism that is very much about that sort of heavy-handedness and your right to parent in the way that you want to. And I'm just like, but can we also add like the proper psychological development? Can we add that? Because that's what we need.
I couldn't agree with her more. As a kid who grew up in that kind of a religious house where the heavy-handed stuff was, way too much, I can tell you it has a lasting impact on our kids. You think you're getting a result out of them, but trust me, you're only doing damage. And I'm not saying you don't punish your kids or you don't put them in their place when they do wrong things. I'm just saying you don't quite need to be as violent about it as so many parents are. Okay, final question for Crissy was something to the effect of, what would you recommend to other people who have been brought up in these really religious homes and they know that it just doesn't fit for them or feel right for them anymore? How would you recommend that they deconstruct that? Give me one of your tools.
So my number one tool would be don't do it alone. Find someone or a therapist or a coach who's been through it that you trust, that's also going to help you pay attention to your body, not theirs, not their story, your body. That's the number one tool.
Probably one of the most powerful things that Chrissy said in our interview was that she had to leave the church to find Christ. And now she's got a great relationship with Christ, and she feels very good in her body, very good in her skin, very good about the way that she's raising her own children and, kind of taking care of her family. So if some of this resonates with you and you grew up in a home like this and you're ready to get curious about it and figure out if you could look at life a different direction or a different way, Crissy Powers' episode was just released last week. I encourage you to jump back into it right now. And it's a special treat. We actually welcomed Cordy McDermott to that podcast as well. And she had some incredible insights about faith and spirituality and where the line is for some of those things. So great conversation. And as always, please send this to somebody that you know needs to hear it. Don't forget to leave us a review, and we will see you next week for a brand new episode of Learn from People Who Lived It. Thank you for being a part of our community, guys. Bye.